David Horowitz, author
Yes.
of this bestseller. And if you haven't read it, you better read it.
Yes.
I want to tell you
True.
something about
So
this
good.
book. This book could save America.
Yeah.
And if we don't start finding out some answers, I don't know why. I'm going to ask him in a few minutes why conservatives are so laid back and why we are not almost standing up and shouting, "Stop the madness."
Right.
You know,
Exactly.
in the front of the book,
Yes.
I happen to enjoy this little page. This is I guess it's page 1. I don't know. But Lori, would you read that for me?
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handled on for them to do the same. Ronald Reagan. Isn't that brilliant? And that is the truth.
And
That is the truth.
David, before I ask you the first question, I want to read from the introduction, if you don't mind. It's Introduction, Restoring the Nation to Greatness. And we may even start talking about that because my first question is negative, so this is positive. Donald Trump's victory in the 2016 election was a political earthquake. Can you say amen?
Amen.
It put an end to the 8 years of a left-wing presidency that divided the American people, eroded America's sovereignty, diminished America's power, and undermined a constitutional foundation that had made America prosperous and great. Before the election, conservatives were justifiably worried that America's decline was reaching a point of no return. And I'm sorry to say, I believe we're still fighting at that point of no return. So I'm going to ask David about that. Please welcome David Horowitz to our show. Great to have you here.
Great to have you here, David.
Do you feel that we're still in danger?
Absolutely. And it's going to be a long war. And when you think of it, we're always in danger. That Reagan quote. I met Ronald Reagan once, and the first thing he said to me was, "I was a second thoughter before you," because he was on the left. And what you understand if you understand the existential situation we're in, if you're a religious person, you understand that the problem is us. The problem is individuals. The problem is that we are fallen creatures and prone to corruption and all the sins that we fight against. So, of course, you have to fight this battle in every generation. But we're at a particularly perilous time in America because if America goes, the world is gone, too. And we've had a movement, which I was once part of, grow to very powerful dimensions. And Barack Obama has the same background I had. He was brought up by communists, but he never left the communist movement. And he did enormous damage to this country, which Trump is undoing as we speak.
Yeah.
So and the battle is being waged now, and it's very vital. And it's going to be touch and go for the next generation.
You write in your book in 1984, you turned a corner in your life when you voted for Ronald Reagan.
It's true. The turning point for me came about 10 years before when I had raised a lot of money for the Black Panther Party and bought a Baptist church in East Oakland that had been overtaken by the inner city. So it was largely white congregation in the middle of East Oakland, which was mainly black. I created a tax-exempt foundation to run this school. It was a school. I called it the Oakland Community Learning Center. I was editing then the largest magazine of the left. It was called Ramparts. And I recruited my bookkeeper to do the books for the school because I foolishly thought, I believed our own propaganda that America was racist and they would shut down the school if they didn't keep the books. I recruited a woman named Betty Van Patter, who was 42 years old at the time with 3 children, who had been my bookkeeper, to do the books for the school. And in December 1974, she disappeared. And by the time the police fished her body out of San Francisco Bay in February, I knew the Panthers had killed her. And that was when I stopped being a leftist.
Oh,
Wow.
God. What a...
And that came right, if you remember, that's 1974. February, in April, thanks to the Democrats in the Congress, aid was cut off to the South Vietnamese regime, and the communists overran the country, and they proceeded to slaughter 2.5 million people in Indochina, and there wasn't one protest by the left against that. There never was an anti-war movement in America. It's always an anti-American movement.
Oh, my God.
Wow.
Wow.
This is pretty serious stuff.
Oh.
I want to tell you something. If we're going to save America, this man has written a book called Big Agenda. It's probably the most well-written book on the subject of Donald Trump.
Absolutely.
You'll understand him. You're going to understand what we're fighting and what's going on in America.
That's right.
And as we read in this opening chapter of the book, that if we don't do something, if we don't pass on to our generation, and if we don't stand up right now, America is in decline, and it was reaching the point of no return, and that's why we had to do it. That's why I felt in my own spirit that we needed to have an election where we changed directions.
That's right.
And I believe God spoke that into my heart.
Yes.
And I have fought at the, almost losing my health for the last year to get this to happen. And when I started reading this book and I began to hear quotes from this book, I began to hear other people on television talk about it. Well, I've now read this book. This book is a must.
Yes.
If we're going to save America, I don't know what's wrong, and I don't want to ask you what's wrong with the church, but I want to ask you what's wrong with the conservative people. We're so quiet and so polite.
Well, there's 2 issues. One is conservatives are civilized people and well brought up. So they're polite. For example, we'll get to this later, but I have a chapter of my book. It's called The Achilles Heel of the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party pretends to support minorities, and particularly black people. The Democratic Party controls every inner city of any size in America, 100%, and has for 50 to 100 years. Everything that's wrong with the inner cities in America that policy can affect, every oppression, every injustice, Democrats and progressives are 100% responsible for, and Republicans are too polite to ever mention it. I don't get it as a former leftist. I was brought up for the war, and I don't see on the other side until actually the advent of Obama has waked people up, and you have the emergence of the Tea Party. It's the first time you have conservatives marching or together. Usually conservatives, everybody is marching to the tune of their own drummer. The second issue is that, and I'm not obviously an expert in this, but the Christian world, particularly the evangelicals, have turned their backs on the world, or had, and were not involved in the fight. And one of the big differences in this election, which I believe is an election to save America, was the role that evangelicals played in supporting Donald Trump.
That's right. That's the truth.
And I'll tell you, they voted. They got up and voted, but now they got to get back up again and stay in the fight.
Stay in the fight. That's the key. Yeah. That is the absolute key. A lot of this book, Big Agenda, is about the left. It's understanding who they are. My parents were communists. They never referred to themselves as, they were card-carrying communists, as communists, always progressives. Liberals, so-called, progressives, and now Democrats, because the Democratic Party has been taken over by the progressives. They believe in a redemption, but they believe that they are the redeemers. And I learned this reading a congressional testimony from a former Sandinista. Of course, the Sandinistas were the Marxists who took over Nicaragua. And one of the Sandinista leaders was a priest named Jose Cardinal. And this was an ex-guerrilla who was testifying. And he said, Cardinal came to us to preach a sermon. And the sermon he preached to these Marxist guerrillas is, "You are the Christ." That was a revelation to me because it rang so true to what I understood, how I believed when I was on the left. We were going to save the world, to redeem the world. If you have read the first 18 chapters of Genesis, you know that the reason the world is in the horrible state it's in is because of us, and that only a divinity could save us.
Amen.
Right. Wow.
Amen.
Good. Powerful.
And that's why they're so dangerous. If you have people who think they're saving the world, and that's why if you look at what happened during the campaign, here's the difference between the left and the right. Donald Trump is on a bus with Billy Bush 11 years ago. He doesn't know he's being televised.
Right.
And he's doing some really rude and crude boasting. That tape is leaked to sabotage his campaign. And one top Republican after another says, that's a bridge too far, I can't support him. Paul Ryan said it, Mitt Romney said it, Jeb Bush, I still can't believe what Jeb Bush said. I have two precious granddaughters, and nothing Donald Trump, because of course he apologized, could say could redeem that or excuse that. Okay, then you go to the other side. Hillary Clinton, she violated the espionage laws by taking classified information and putting it on an unsecure server and sharing it basically with all our enemies. She lied to the FBI. She lied to the Congress. She lied to the mother of a fallen Benghazi victim over his coffin.
Yes, she did.
And not one Democrat said, this is a bridge too far, I can't support her. They're communists, and a small c. That's the way they behave, and that's who they are.
Don't go away. We'll be right back after this special message.
We put together